Hey there, Aquarius Ascendant. This is your Ascendant forecast for the week ahead from the 13th to the 19th of October 2025. Now, this is an exciting week ahead, I would say, because we've got Venus going into the sign of Libra, a fellow air sign, and she's really happy in the sign of Libra. She's a ruler of Libra. So that's going to really help the air energy that obviously you have with your Ascendant in Aquarius. We've also got Pluto going direct, and that's going to really have a knock-on effect on one of your ruling planets, which is Uranus. Now, Uranus is already in a lovely, almost exact trine, or it is an exact trine at the moment, with Pluto. As Pluto goes forwards, the sort of transformational energies that you've been feeling, and of course, Pluto is in your first house right now, as it goes direct, it's going to feel like you're really cooking on gas, that things are really going to start moving forwards beautifully. So, yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. There's also a lovely series of grand trines, a grand water trine, also a grand air trine. I did speak about these in my autumn forecast and a little bit last week, but this one coming in right now is, I think, just very, very special, really special, involving Uranus, you know, one of your ruling planets, and also involving Saturn, who's another one of your ruling planets. So, yeah, your planets couldn't be in a stronger position right now. I also love the fact that Venus is coming out of her opposition from last week with Saturn, your ruler. She is, however, going into an exact opposition on the 14th with Neptune. And this is a strong energy. It's followed up a few days later by an opposition between the Sun and Chiron. Hence the title for this, you know, the more we ache for love, the more we fear being seen. You know, the Sun in opposition to Chiron, I think, is really hinting at where our identity, i.e. our stories that we hold about ourselves, are hurting us, you know, where they're just not helping us. They're sort of hindering us somehow. And then Venus in the opposition to Neptune brings up a whole heap of things. But Neptune, both Neptune and Chiron can be real victims. And they can really turn things around and be real heroes. And so I think with the dynamic of the Sun and Venus in opposition to Neptune and Chiron, we've got this hero-victim story playing out. And also the idea of, do we need to be saved, or are we going to be a savior? Again, you know, the hero saving people, or the victim feeling like they need to be saved. Now, I've got so much to talk about this. Because even if that doesn't immediately strike a nerve with you, I still think the stories that we've been holding are responsible for what's not moving forwards. And so I will be sharing my thoughts as to why very shortly. Before we do that, though, I just want to say that this ascendant forecast is using a Western tropical whole sign charting, which is what I think appeals to most people watching this. If you're new to this channel as well, my name's Louisa, and this is kind of how I roll, like Western tropical whole sign for my forecasts on YouTube. So hopefully it'll be beneficial. So anyway, let's bring up my slides. Now, before I go any further, I just want to put out a massive shout out to people who are supporting my channel with donations, and or through my membership on School. That's www.skool.com. That's SKOOL, where I've got my community. You all have made such a difference in my life, and I just couldn't do this channel now without you. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. So where we're going to start this then is with the big question that I'm going to be answering by the end of this. So if you want to know what the answers are or how I see this, then you need to stick around to the end. But I'm asking if I dropped the story of being the victim or the hero, what healing truth might emerge? Now, the healing truth is very much about Chiron, because Chiron shows us where we've got a vulnerability, but also what happens when we've healed it. You know, so Chiron really gives us a very strong lesson in things that make us diseased or ill at ease, and also shows us how we become healed, and also where we become an authority and master on what we've healed. So, you know, the fact that we've got this opposition going on, and Chiron is part of a grand square with Pluto and Jupiter and the Sun. To me, this is really showing that Chiron has a lot to play at the moment. You know, he's got a major role and his role is healing the psyche, healing the body. So what healing might occur? Now, obviously, we can feel ourselves to be victims at many times in our life, maybe at the time of a breakup, maybe when we've been ill ourselves. I know I was really chronically ill years and years ago on 2 occasions. And yeah, I definitely felt like a victim of what I was chronically ill with. It feels very sort of indiscriminate at times. And there are times when I felt like a hero as well, where I felt really empowered and turbocharged and ready to take on the world. And no doubt that's the same for you too. However, when we stick with our victim stories or our hero stories and we continue the stories all the time, they tend to lock us into place. Now, with Neptune can really show where things are exalted and where, we've got this chance to connect beautifully and unconditionally. And of course, the danger with Neptune is we feel the beauty that we know is possible in our hearts and in our minds, and yet we can't necessarily see it in our actual real reality. The reality of the situation of a dualistic paradigm that we live in doesn't always feel like it's unconditional love. And so sometimes we have to navigate the gap between perfect or ideal, and obviously Neptune really deals in idealistic and ideologies and stuff, versus the very real energies. And so here we've got real love with Venus in opposition to idealized love. And of course, every time we've had idealized love, possibly, where we've put our parents on a pedestal from early childhood, most kids look up to their parents, from word go, because we depend on our parents. And that first wound where we felt rejected or where we felt disappointed, where we felt scapegoated, anywhere where, our idealized parents have come off that pedestal, we get a really harsh wake-up call that actually humans can be really sucky sometimes. And, in turn, we've become sucky humans ourselves. It's difficult to, I don't know if unconditional love actually really exists. I'm a mum of 3 and I aim to love my children unconditionally, but I can only do that as far as my personality will allow me to in this human form. So, yeah, I think Neptune in opposition to Venus is challenging us to notice the difference and come to terms with the difference at some level. And so, we may well have, sort of described ourselves as a victim of deceit or betrayal or rejection. And so we might be looking to protect ourselves from being hurt like that again. We might also have become the hero of the piece. Maybe our parents weren't able to do for us what we needed them to. However, we've become a hero and we're making sure the next generation doesn't suffer. And I know I've been playing that one, like where you go above and beyond and then you think that you're somehow, I don't know, almost like we're well, every parent, I think, wants to do better than what they experienced in their childhood. We're always looking to improve. And yeah, we can become heroes. And then we also get at some point really stuck, because to be an absolute unconditional hero, it's almost well, I think it is impossible, because you can't just keep giving and saving. At some point, everybody else has to participate in their own healing. You can't do it for people. And so again, we can feel victimized again. So the victim hero can sometimes be the same person. Where we felt like the victim, we become the hero to overcome the problems. So I wonder where that story is still playing out for you, because it's going to be showing up in this chart. And as we recognize where it's showing up, we might notice there's a freedom for us, like what thoughts can help us move beyond this. And as you look here, you'll see that this is on the 13th, and then this chart here is for the 19th. But as you look here, both Venus and the Sun are in the 9th house, and then Neptune and Chiron are in the 3rd. So it's going through the 3rd house and 9th house polarity. This to me is showing, it's not a bad polarity to experience this in, first of all. There are harsher polarities to experience this from. But the 3rd house is very much about the situation we grew up in, you know, our early schools, our early friendships, our interactions with siblings and cousins and wider family members. It's about where we belonged, like the pack we belonged in. And so, you know, if we've got some disillusionment and hurt and feelings of social rejection, which could come about from bullying or from being excluded, in particular with Chiron down here as well, anywhere where we felt like we weren't accepted at school or accepted in our pack, that's a pretty harsh reality to hold about ourselves, isn't it? Now up here, we've got Venus and the Sun really encouraging us to broaden out and go further away from this place. This is a place that we know, is known, where we learn sort of ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and where we belong, and, you know, where we might belong to a pack. Over here is where we're in the unknown, where there's things to learn, where we can be curious. It's also not an area where we belong. It's somewhere where we might be foreign, or where we might experience everything that's diverse and foreign and exciting. It's also a place where there are no rights or wrongs, but there's a greater context. So there's a contextual meaning. And so up here, I really feel like, you know, there's a feeling of, I want to get away. I want to be away from everything that I identify as a place of where I might get rejected. And it's also suggesting, you know, how we might study or learn more to understand our way out of the situations. It's also a place where we encounter people that have a different viewpoint, and where we encounter people with a different life story, and we move beyond our own social conditioning of the narrative, and we come into a whole new narrative, which down here the people can't understand necessarily. And so you may well find that you're protecting yourself by taking yourself out of all the sort of conditioned and painful responses from childhood. And of course, the danger with this is we may have made a decision that nobody from this part of our life has moved on. But you might find actually that everyone felt the same back then. Often we suffer in silence. Often we honestly think we are on our own, and yet everybody's individual struggles happen at different times. So you might actually be able to come back into resonance with some people from your childhood, or from some people from where you grew up, because, you know, as adults you might have found the way to explain and express things in such a way that you can support each other. However, you know, you might also be now doing the excluding, like in your desire maybe to protect yourself, and you might be protecting yourself by moving away and being away and having a much bigger context to live your life from. But you might now be actually rejecting the people that you felt rejected by. So it's an interesting little conundrum there, isn't it? And of course, if you've created a new, curious and exciting new paradigm for yourself that the people that you might have known might want to get to know about, but you're not going to give them the opportunity to, you're still holding them potentially at bay from ever being able to support and share in your joy. So my parents used to say to me as a child, "Oh, Louisa, there you go again, cutting your nose off to spite your face." And as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking maybe in moving away so that you can feel more attached to the great unknown and the great adventure and more fun people, more interesting people, you might still be cutting yourself from actually what you're really wanting, which is that sense of cohesion and community and that sense that you matter. And so I wonder, you know, what if you realized you actually did matter and you didn't have to hold on to a story anymore about how different you are? See, right now, Pluto in your first house is creating such a massive transformation for you in terms of your overall dynamic personality, the likes of which have been birthing over the last 3 years. As Pluto went in and out of Capricorn and back into Aquarius, there's been confusion and there's been this throwing off of the shackles and like cutting free to be your individual self. And so, you know, in that sort of really strong need for independence. And, you know, with Uranus down here in your 5th house, it's really showing your passion for developing what lights you up, and how your mind frame is changing in terms of what lights you up as well. And so, you know, the difference between narrative fitting you, or the you that kind of half fitted in and half didn't and always felt a little bit odd and wonky, now it's even harder. And the people around you might also be, I can't even relate to that person anymore. They're going through so many changes, I don't know how to do it. And so I think there's an opportunity here. You know, if you're really looking for greater levels of support from people that you've known in your life, and if you're willing to see if maybe not all of your assumptions about the past are correct, it might take some openness on your part. It might be asking you to maybe, you know, give an olive branch out, you know, to give someone, like throw someone a bone, you know, so that they've got something to work on, because you might seem so different from everyone else around you, and everyone else seems just so similar. You know, like everyone you've always known just looks like everyone that you've always known. You know, it doesn't feel like they've changed so much. So it's easier for you to understand them than it is for them to understand you. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think at the core of this is about belonging. And I think it's entirely possible, as this week goes on, to feel that sense of deep belonging to the whole world. And that also includes the people that maybe you know, that you were raised from, or the community, or the mindset. There are still some things that probably also carry some relevance still. So to me, this is like, how can you bring your past and your exciting new future into more of a fusion? Because I just think holding the situation as a story that maybe you were a victim, or you needed to be a hero to escape, that's holding you out of the whole dynamic altogether. And I think there are probably some sadnesses and difficulties around that. And so what becomes possible when you stop trying to save others, or be saved, or save your life by moving away and experiencing life at a much greater level? You know, what becomes possible when you don't have that story anymore? I think you would just feel so much more connected to everybody, and be more in acceptance of everybody else. And of course, once you're in the energy of accepting everyone at a much deeper level, no matter how foreign they seem to you, how old-fashioned they seem to you, how wrong politics they might appear to you, the more you can come into acceptance of everybody having their individual ways of being, the more likely people are to feel that acceptance energy from you and to accept you exactly as you are. So I think this is a journey of acceptance. But I could be wrong. And I'm open to that. What's really helping you right now is this just beautiful Mercury-Mars conjunction that's coming in. It will be exact as of next week. And next week we'll also have the new moon in Libra in your 9th house, which is all exotic and exciting. And, you know, Mercury and Mars in your 10th house is really showing you being able to take action in your career. It's also linking up with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, and also the North Node and Saturn and Neptune. I mean, my goodness, it doesn't get much better than that. You know, to me, this is the repairing of your self-esteem, so much so that you feel really valuable. You feel like you are your greatest resource, and all of a sudden you're getting the opportunity to prove it. That's delightful. And, you know, with this air trine that's going on as well, with Pluto and Uranus and Venus, you know, what I'm seeing here is this opportunity for you to be different and to be completely at peace with it. So I think there's some beautiful stuff coming up for you, Aquarius. Really, truly. So I'm going to leave that there. If you found that this has spoken to you at a level, and you'd like more, then have a think about my membership. It's hosted on school.com. Forgive me if you can hear my family going tss in the background. I think we're trying to scare the cats away from our new bird visitors at home. So, but if you are interested, I do Monday to Friday forecasts in my membership. I also do love and money forecasts for each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's every week. So there's a lot of content there. And if you like the way I've been in this, you might like that as well. But, you know, if you're just curious about going deeper into your chart to look at this and much more intensely, to sort of really get down into what might be holding you back in resistance from your next big step or your next big thriving push, then just get in touch. All of my details are below in the show notes. You can also find it on my YouTube channel page. And you can just book directly in my diary. It's really simple. So there you go. That's the end of it. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hope you've enjoyed it and catch you next time. Bye for now.